All right, welcome back to Sunrise today. Well, yes, we will be talking about the deployment of BVAs, uploading the election results from the world level, polling units, and all of that which we brushed on yesterday. Well, INEC did themselves also spoke about that yesterday, saying they will maintain what they had initially stated in terms of processes to upload that. Well, Samson Itodo, as you've seen, that joins us this morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. Always a delight to be here.
Yeah, you know, I know that there had been that concern as to how is this process going to be this time, with lots of people asking questions referring to what transpired in Anambra. They were a little cautious, even though INEC said, look, we improve on every process. But given what they've said yesterday and the concerns that people have about ability to view those results uploaded simultaneously, what do you think?
Well, first, we need to situate this discussion within the context of the controversies that have trailed the deployment of technology in our electoral process. If you look at the whole process of the electoral amendment, there were cases where provisions that legalized the use of electronic transmission of results were either allegedly deleted from the reports, or it became a huge source of controversy. And the fact that we have that provision in the electoral law is victory for Nigerians, because it took a lot of citizens, engagement to get that provision part of the electoral law. And so it is clear that you've got a section of the political class who are scared of the technology being introduced by INEC for enhancing the integrity of the process. First is the BVAs and then the IREF. The whole concept of electronic transmission of results is to deepen the transparency of the process and make it difficult for politicians and even INEC officials to undermine the process. Now, what has happened is a situation where once elections are conducted, ballots are counted, results are recorded on the EC8A forms. Those forms are images of the forms are taken with the BVAS machines and then uploaded on the INEC election results viewing portal. And INEC has test run this, and it's clear it's deepening the integrity of the process. But there are still gaps that need to be addressed, and we can talk about those gaps. But principle, amongst them is the fact that if you look at the IREF portal, and I followed the discussion yesterday, the portal does encourage public participation. First, you need to own an account, and you have to register to create an account on the portal. And that portal can only be accessible to only a section of Nigerians, and that's Nigerians that have email accounts and also who have internet connectivity before you can access it. And this is why Channels TV and Yaga Africa, launched the ERAD to take the IREF to the homes of Nigerians. And so that itself, excludes a section of Nigerians, but that has been, mitigated by the ERAD. The second dimension is the quality of the results sheets that are on the IREF. And we've raised these concerns, and ERAD has shown that there are some gaps, things like blurry images, wrong forms that are uploaded on the portal, and INEC has expressed commitment, to addressing these issues. But there are some issues that are left hanging. The first, the point about simultaneous upload. Simultaneous upload, yes, sounds plausible, but it's actually challenging because we know that there are dark spots. And the dark spots are not statistically significant, I must say. But the guidelines already provide, and I think Maobe responded aptly yesterday when she said that the guidelines provides that in cases where polling units don't have internet connectivity, for the purposes of transmitting the results, the presiding officer, as well as the parting agents, including citizens, can follow the presiding officer and the BVAs to areas where there is internet connectivity, and they upload the results on the portal. Now, the big issue is, it lies with the quality of the results sheets being
in terms of what, if it's legible?
Now, and this is why voters need to be mindful of this. that we must ensure that it's the original EC8A forms that are uploaded on the portal. Because there could be instances where fake EC8As may be uploaded on the portal. This is why citizens have a role to play, that on the day of elections, once results have been recorded, they should watch over that entire process and ensure the presiding officers take images of the results, the original result sheets at the polling units where election was conducted. And where there's no internet, they should accompany the presiding officers to the locations where those results should, where they'll be uploaded on the portal. I think this level of vigilance is important. The second dimension is what we have told INEC consistently, that yes, we see a commitment to transparency of the results management process, but you need to upscale. And two things we've asked INEC to do. One is to transmit accreditation data on the BVAs. On the IREV, what you have today is accreditation data recorded on the EC8A forms. But the BVAS stores accreditation data. And the law says that collation will be based on verification of accreditation data transmitted from the polling unit. And this is what happens. There are cases where presiding officers and politicians can alter accreditation data figures on the EC8As. But one information and data that you may not be able to alter is the accreditation data on the BVAS. And so if INEC transmits the accreditation data on the BVAS, publish it on the IREV, Nigerians can compare the accreditation data as well as the data recorded on the results.
Has INEC responded to this?
Well, INEC said in the last couple of months that they're going to implement this. We've not received any updated information on whether this will be updated. But one information that we have received was the fact that they would publish all the EC8 series. So the EC8A is at the polling unit, the EC8B is at the ward, the EC8C at the local government collation, and then the EC8D. And I think it's important that Nigerians continue to demand that level of transparency from INEC.
So about that first point you made, pardon me. When you talk about possibility of uploading a fake form EC8A, is it possible that a fake EC8A form will already, a snapshot of it will already be in the BVAS machine, and then they perhaps upload that one, even though they might have snapped the original one that people think they snap, and then they upload the one that might have already been there? Is it possible?
Well, I think this is what INEC can respond to, but I think it's near impossible to do that. But given, you know, the determined effort of a section of the political class to undermine the process, I will not put it past them. And this is why vigilance is important. But INEC has said that it is near impossible to preload images on the BVAS, and I think it's actually impossible. This is why on the day of elections, before the commencement of accreditation and voting, the BVAS will be open for agents of political parties, election observers, and citizens to see and verify before the process commences. And these kinds of information is what citizens actually require. And I hope that citizens will, you know, assert themselves and their role in safeguarding the process. Because stopping rigging on February 25th and March 11th, it's not going to be a function of just the institutions responsible for INEC. I say the hope actually lies on citizens' vigilance.
So far, so good. Thankfully, we've had, I mean, especially with the introduction of the BVAS, we're told miraculous things were happening with the introduction of the BVAS. I think a lot of people imagined it was going to be the solution to stopping rigging in its entirety. But from what you know, in terms of what we have put in our laws and what we have now seen on the ground, in terms of the elections that have been conducted in Anambra, in Ekiti, and also in Osun, you know, what are some of the gaps that we have noticed? I mean, you pointed out a few where it is that citizens will need to be vigilant. But for some of these dark spots that might have been noticed, how prevalent would you say they were? And how would you say that they marred the final result, if at all they did? Because I know that, you know, as you rightly pointed out, Yaga and channels where, you know, we learned something and we're monitoring and watching the vote count together. So how significant would you say that these dark spots have been in terms of finally getting the final collated figures?
I say this without fear of contradiction, that the results of these 3 elections that you've referenced, the Ekiti, the Osun, and the Anambra elections, were indeed a reflection of the votes cast at the polling unit. The PVT figures shows that. The ERAD data also shows that. And you can also complement that with reports from other election observers. Were there challenges and gaps? Yes, there were challenges. Were they significant enough to impact the overall outcome of those elections? The answer is in the negative. Now, what are those gaps and challenges? First, if you look at provisions of the law, and let's take the role of you know of INEC in this entire process. Now, first, if you look at both elections, there are cases where issues around the distribution of voters to polling units was a fundamental issue. And we hope that INEC will redistribute voters. Because you recall, a few months ago, INEC created new polling units. What this creation of polling units did was to create 3 sort of additional sets of polling units. First, there are polling units who are underserved. You have overpopulated polling units. And then you had polling units that didn't have any registered voters. There were cases where people showed up at some polling units, even though they had PVCs, but they couldn't vote at those polling units because their details were already moved from those polling units, and INEC didn't inform them. And so INEC needs to redistribute voters to polling units in such a way that you don't have this congestion that you saw in the Osun elections, because INEC had to deploy, you know, about 2 or 3 BVAs machines to some polling units because of the population. So what's the point creating additional polling units when you still have polling units that have over 2,000 registered voters? And so for the 2023 elections, it's important for INEC to address that. The second sort of gap, and around this technology, which we've highlighted, you know, it's the point about the upload of the publication of the accreditation data and issues around the EC8A, all the EC8 series. But more importantly, is this complexity around the PVC collection figures. You know, the new law provides new parameters for measuring, for determining overvoting, as well as the margin of lead between candidates. And what the law says, in considering what overvoting or margin of lead, it will no longer be the voters register, but the total number of PVCs collected. Now, INEC needs to publish, you know, the total number of PVCs collected per polling unit based on the new guidelines and the law. What we saw in Ekiti and Osun was the fact that INEC, you know, sustained the collection of the PVCs till about 48 hours to election day. And it became challenging, you know, to publish the updated figures. In fact, in Ekiti and I think in Osun, the final PVC, the data for collected PVCs was released about 12 hours before the elections. In those instances, even though we understand the complexity, tracking and monitoring, you know, the whole process becomes very difficult. And so INEC will need, and we understand that there's a new standard operating procedure, because the data for PVC collected, or PVC collection data, needs to be available for both political parties and civil society to monitor the process. The third critical issue was also the role that security agencies, play in safeguarding the process. And you look at what transpired in Anambra down to the other elections. But the functionality of these tools is critical. And so INEC needs to ensure that in Ekiti and Osun, you had about 2,445 polling units. In Osun, it was 3,000. In the 2023 elections, that server is going to manage over 550,000 images of result sheets. Is INEC ensuring that the technology infrastructure is in place such that the processing power of those systems and the server will be affected. Because what we saw in a place like Osun, in a few hours immediately after results announcement started, people had challenges logging into the server, creating accounts, because the portal couldn't handle the quantum of commands and requests being made.
Okay, we do have questions for you from Lagos. Go ahead, guys.
All right, thank you, Chamberlain. I just want to know for you how significant the questions raised by the national chairman of the APC and even the national organizing secretary during that visit by the Commonwealth Election Observation Mission, where he was asking about, the technology, saying that in terms of network, that even some parts in Abuja don't have network, talked about electricity supply, and then he asked if INEC can actually give them 100% assurance that this technology would work. I wonder if that's a major concern for you. Is it significant enough? I just wonder, because that's a major one now. It looks like the APC is saying, well, if we're not sure this will work, then we're not going with it.
Well, Kayode, I would have been surprised if that question doesn't come up, because I think everyone was jolted with the news reports yesterday. Although it's not surprising, because we know that, a section of the political class are resisting the use of the BVAs. And you can see over the last couple of weeks, the INEC chairman and INEC have consistently adopted one particular line, that the use of the BVAs and IREF has come to stay and there's no going back. When you hear those kinds of statements, I think it's a direct response to a section of the political class that don't want this technology. And the reasons that they advance, quite frankly, are not tenable. So you talk about connectivity. No one is saying that every aspect of the country, has internet connectivity to transmit election results. But do we have 80 to 90% connectivity? Government institutions have said that we have the capacity to transmit. And so the areas where results cannot be transmitted electronically are statistically insignificant. And so we cannot use that as a basis to push back on the use of electronic transmission of results. I think that when you do a cost-benefit analysis of this technology, the benefits to the electoral process, the benefits to our democracy, the benefits to political stability is high. And so it's over and above, the cost. So I think that those politicians and political actors who don't want the BVAS, should tell Nigerians if there are other reasons behind the one being projected as the reasons behind it. As you know, that there are also frivolous litigations against the use of the BVAS. Why are a section of our political class scared and threatened by this technology? Because it limits election rigging, because it limits the opportunities and the tools that they have at their disposal to subvert popular choice and the will of the Nigerian people. And I think it will be a great disservice to Nigerians if this attempt to manipulate the process through the resistance of this, of BVAS and IREF is sustained. And so I urge any politician or any political party that is interested in the credibility of our electoral process and also interested in the legitimacy of electoral outcomes to embrace this technology. And we are not saying technology is a silver bullet. No, it's got its own vulnerabilities. This is why there has to be mechanisms in place to prevent this technology from compromise. But I think that Nigerians have said they want electronic transmission of results. Their representatives in the National Assembly have amended the law to give INEC the power to do that. INEC has demonstrated sufficient capacity to deploy this technology. I think all the factors and indicators that you need for the deployment of this technology are in place. And so I don't think that we should let this sort of debates to continue.
All right, so we'll let it go at this point in time. But of course, as we progress, I see that there are several questions. People are asking that part where INEC says, well, if there isn't any network, when you get to a place where there's network, it will automatically upload. So they're asking, wait a minute, aren't they leaving things to chance? Because you know that it could leave options of thugs snatching certain things, dissuading people, or taking it to another location. So they're a bit apprehensive on that one. So, but
no, but they should know that this is not the first time. It happened in Anambra, it happened in Ondo. In all the elections where the IRF has been deployed, we've seen Nigerians exercise agency. And my call to Nigerians is to exercise that agency on the day of election. When you go to vote, don't leave the polling unit. Stay there, the results are counted, ensure the images are taken. If they're not, follow them, follow the results until the actual results that reflects the votes that you cast at the polling unit is uploaded on the portal.
Well, so there's strength in numbers. So you have to all do that in numbers. I mean, the officials will expect a lot of questions from all of you on that day. So it won't be strange to any one of them. So yes, nothing wrong in you ensuring that you do it, albeit very, very peacefully. Thank you for coming on.
Always a delight. Thank you.
All the best. We're back in a moment. As fuel scarcity in Lagos now, well, I know Abuja had their bout and battle of that one, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. Stay with us.